It really is such a joy to be together on this intergenerational Sunday. So, as I dive in, I want to bring us back. We have been talking for the last handful of months on this Sunday in particular about what we call the APEST giftings. We've been sitting in Ephesians chapter 4, what God has gifted the church for the maturing and the building up of the church body. We have every month been focusing on that, and we're back there again. So if you're new, if you're visiting with us, if all of this information is new to you, that's okay. I'll try the best I can to sum up certain things for you so that you can feel like you're caught up and a part of what we're discussing and talking about together. I also had someone first service come and find me, and he said, is there any way that we can get the information that you shared this morning all in one picture so that we can have a definition of all of them all together? And I said, absolutely, we will send that out this week. So if you have no idea what I'm talking about, that's okay. You'll figure it out here shortly. But if you are interested in more information, if you're interested in getting on that email list, please let me know. You can fill out one of those Connect cards that Alex was talking about, drop it off at the connections table with Lorinda, because we would love to involve you in the conversation, because we truly believe that God has called and equipped the church to be the church. The church is not dependent on a single person to fulfill everything for everyone. The church is not wired to be centered on individuals. It's meant to be centered on the Lord. And as such, he has called, he has equipped, he has gifted people in the church with gifts for the maturing and the building up of the church body. So we are going to focus on that. We're going to be in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 through 16. So if you do not own a Bible, there are free Bibles in English and in Spanish all around this room. Please grab one, make it your own, or you can feel free to use your phone, whatever you have, because we're going to be in this passage, and I'm going to read it again for us today. And the reason why we're talking about Ephesians chapter 4 with spiritual gifts is this is the only place in the New Testament where we get clarity that these spiritual gifts are gifted to the church for the church. We read of other gifts that God has given and equipped people with to use in relationship and connection with others, but this is specifically in context of the church. We are called to do this thing together. We are called to invest and walk out those gifts so that others can better know Christ and better walk in their own. So we're going to read this. We're in Ephesians chapter 4. I'm going to read verses 1 through 16 for us. And as I read it, you will see up on the slide behind me the breakdown of the verses. They're lumped together. Paul is being really specific and talking about how we have unity in the midst of diversity, and diversity both in bad situations, but also in the uniqueness of the way that we're wired. Again, we talked about this last week. We are not called to be uniform. We are called to be unified. And then it is for the maturing of the body. So Ephesians chapter 4. Therefore I, a prisoner for serving the Lord, beg you to lead a life worthy of your calling. For you have been called by God. Be humble and gentle. Be patient with one another, making allowance for each other's faults because of your love. Always keep yourselves united in the Holy Spirit and bind yourselves together with peace. Again, we are all called. We are all one body. We have the same Spirit. We have all been called to the same glorious future. There is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, and there is only one God and Father who is over us all and in us all and living through us all. However, he has given each one of us a special gift according to the generosity of Christ. That is why the scriptures say, when he ascended to the heights, he led a crowd of captives and gave gifts to his people. Notice that it says he ascended, which means that Christ first came down to the lowly places in which we live. The same one who came down is the one who ascended higher than all the heavens so that his rule might fill the entire universe. He is the one who gave these gifts to the church, the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and the teachers. Their responsibility is to equip God's people to do his work and to build up the church. I'm going to read that again. Their responsibility, our responsibility, is to equip God's people to do his work, to build up the church, the body of Christ, until we reach unity in our faith and knowledge of God's Son, so that we will be mature and full grown in the Lord, measuring up to the full stature of Christ. I'm going to go ahead and stop right there for just a moment, because we're going to dive into these. I'm not going to spend as much time as I did last month defining each one of these out, but I'm really briefly going to sum up what we talked about in one sentence or two, so that you can, if you're hearing it for the first time, you can have a second to process, okay, yeah, I really think that one resonates with me. If you've been walking with us through this journey, you can be reminded of the one that you're really thinking may be the one that is your gifting, and that we can all grow together in this whole process. But I want to remind us of a couple things. The first is this: kids, youth, teens. I was just talking to my 10-year-old son this morning, and he came up to me, he's like, Mom, which one am I? And I said, first of all, just know that our identity is in Jesus and in Jesus alone. These gifts do not define us. Our identity is spoken for. These gifts are things God has given us to help others. It's okay if you don't know. It's okay that you're still learning. Kids, youth, teens, I would encourage you. You don't have to know right now. Adults, you don't have to know right now. It's a journey for all of us. Our identity is in him and in him alone, but these are gifts that he has given us. So as such, I'm going to start using the word, to the best of my ability, the word intelligence. That God has gifted some with a teacher intelligence, gifted some with an evangelist intelligence, so that we can get in the habit of understanding that our identity is secure. These are the gifts. And so I want to be clear with that. I didn't share this first service, but I was reminded of it between the services. It's the same. We have a conversation when it comes to what divides people, and you think about politics, and people say, I am a Republican, I am a Democrat. And I was talking to a good friend in Canada, and she said, it's funny to me that Americans do that. They attach their identity to how they vote. They say, I am this, I am that. She said, for us, we say, I vote this, I vote that. And what a cool reminder for us. Our identity is secure. Yet God has gifted us and wired us each uniquely. And those intelligences are the apostle, the prophet, the evangelist, the shepherd, and the teacher. And we're going to dive into these. Again, these are quick recaps, but I'm also going to give some new information. I'm going to talk a little bit, this is a little bit outside my comfort zone, just so you know. I'm going to talk a little bit about stats. Numbers and me don't really get along, but I'm going to try, because I think it's really important for us to understand even some of the percentages of how God has wired individuals, because it speaks to, I think, both the unity and the temptation for there to be disunity. Because it's often very difficult when someone thinks and is wired differently than me for me to really resonate and understand them. And that can often be very divisive. So let's talk this through for just a moment. Because one of the ones he mentions right away is the shepherd. The shepherd is the nurturer, the champion of relationships. The shepherd can come in. They can know exactly how you're feeling, exactly what you need to help you feel better. They will walk with you through grief and trauma. They are consistent. They are faithful. They're really good listeners. They're nurturers. And if you're still wrestling yours out, please know, too, that these core questions and core desires might help you, because the core question for a shepherd is, are the people of God caring for and showing compassion for others? This drive in them is for predictable patterns that allow for a sense of security within the body of believers. What a wonderful gift. I had someone come and find me last week. She's in here right now, so I'm going to try not to embarrass her too much. But she came and found me after service last time, and she said, I'm a shepherd. And I said, that's so cool. Do you remember when we first met? And she kind of stopped and thought for a moment. And she said, yeah. I said, what did you do? I didn't even know your name yet, and you came and found me, and you asked if there was a way you could help. How cool. What a beautiful gift to see where others are at and what they need. 43% of people are shepherds, are wired with this intelligence. are wired to think this way. Close to half. Can we think why? Because we need help. We need people to see us. We need to be seen. We need to feel like we know that we belong. And what is super interesting is of that 43%, 70% of them are female. 30% are male. So you're going to catch on to a pattern of things I'm going to say here, but I want to speak right now to the guys who may feel like they have this intelligence, this wiring. And I wonder if there are times where you feel a little bit like you don't belong, or your gifting doesn't quite feel like it fits. And I'm here to tell you right now, it does fit, it's okay, and we need it. But for the most part, women are wired with this, and 43% have this gifting. Pretty cool. Then we have the prophets. The prophets are our innovators. They're our champions of future ideas. They care about the integrity of the church. We talked about the image, the picture of the car and all the different roles in a car as the car is driving to the mountain, that a prophet can not only see the mountain, they can see the mountain range behind the mountain. They can see all the pitfalls, all the things that could get in the way. They are ones who actively hear and listen to God. They are often highly creative. The question that drives them is, are the people of God hearing his voice and responding appropriately? I just had a conversation, so you may learn quickly this is my wiring. I had a conversation this week with a staff member who was talking me through some of the things that he's been bouncing around, ideas that he's had for ministry, and I stopped him and I said, okay, what is it that matters? And he looked at me and kind of rolled his eyes. He said that I'm hearing God and responding. Yes. Because that matters. It matters to me. Not that we're just taking all these ideas and doing it. What is God actually saying in our midst? That there's active listening and responding that provides substance to our Christian journey. Are you ready for this one? 9% of people have this wiring. And not only that, there's two types of prophets. There's the feeling prophet and the thinking prophet, which means that 9% is actually divided in half. So it's 4.5. I can do it. I can do math. 4.5% of folks have one of those two types of prophetic giftings. So what I'm about to say, prophets. Prophets, have you often, who have that intelligence, who have that wiring, have you often found yourself feeling like you don't quite fit? You don't quite seem to fit the mold of what's going on, that because you're thinking creatively and you're listening, that it just seems like you feel a little bit odd. You're not odd. It's okay, and we need that gift. And then we think about the teaching intelligence, the ones who think about all the things that none of us think about. The teachers who ask so many questions because they're guarding something that matters. They're the ones who want to ensure that as we move forward in our kingdom calling, that we are not letting go of the things that matter most. God's truth, his words. They are champions of systems. They ask questions. They think about details. They want to know the parameters because they want us to operate in freedom within those parameters. They are ones who care about the truth, are excited by it, and guard it. The question that drives them is, are the people of God immersing themselves in Scripture and incarnating it? Incarnating it is a fancy word for living it out. Are we actually doing what this thing says? And are we spending time within it? Their desire is for spiritual protection of the truths that define who we are as a community, that guide our faith, that provide stability. 30% of the population have this intelligence, this ability to know the right questions to ask. 70% are men, 30% are women. It's exactly flipped. So let me ask this question. Women who have this wiring, gifting, are there times where you feel like you don't quite fit, when you feel like you're asking too many questions, when you feel like, man, am I being obnoxious because I want clarity on all this? You're not being obnoxious. We need it. We need you because we have to guard what this is all about. And then we have the evangelist, the connectors. These are our relational folks. They are champions of relational networks, collaborators. They're effective communicators. They want the gospel to go forward. They bring people together. They want to share the good news of Jesus. The core question is, are new people entering the kingdom of God? Is the message getting out? Are people hearing of Jesus and receiving him? Their desire is for relational attraction that can bring social diversity to a body of believers. For the evangelists, they have this beautiful ability to see people on the edges and to bring them in. To bring in and help them find their unique wiring, their unique gifting. They see people, they connect people, they bring people together. 11% of folks have this wiring. And not only that, of the 11%, there are actually 4 different types of evangelists, which we dove into last time. I'm not going to do that again today. So if you take that 11% and divide it by 4, which someone had to help me with this math earlier, it's 2.75. So 2.75% of folks represent the different types of evangelistic giftings. Do you know what I'm about to say? Are there times, if that's the way you're wired, where you feel like you don't quite fit? Where you feel like you're being obnoxious about wanting to share the good news of Jesus? You're not being obnoxious, and we need that. And let me say this. This is often the evangelistic gifting that we tend to misidentify, that if we don't have it, if we don't act like this, if we don't do this in the church context, then we must not be a good enough Christian. Because I should be out on the street corner. I should be evangelizing to all my friends. I should be waving a big banner. I should. And yes, we're all called to share Jesus in our own way. But not all of us are wired this way. And that's okay. Let's take a breath. We're okay. God's word is going to get out when we're operating in our gifting. There will be a message that's so contagious that folks will want to be a part. And finally, the apostle, the champion of strategic vision, the results-focused, problem-solving, entrepreneurial person who can walk into a room and be like, okay, I think we should do this, and we should move that, and I think if we did this, and then maybe if we moved those curtains over there, and then maybe if we put those chairs in the back, because they're so busy thinking about all the different ways that the gospel can go forward. They're strategic. They're ones who are sent out. They're pioneers. Their question is, are we leading the people of God to their destiny? Are we actually doing things that empower people to walk in their giftings? Are we coming alongside others? Are people walking in their calling? That desire is for missional purpose that provides significance to what we are doing as believers. 7% of folks have this wiring. Now, if we take the totals, so 43, 30, 11 for the evangelist, 7 for the prophet, or 9 for the prophet, 7 for the apostle. This is the smallest. So apostles, what am I about to say to you? Are there times when you feel like you don't quite fit because you're moving really quickly and you're frustrated that people won't keep up and you've already solved the problem? And if people would just think outside the box, it's okay. We need that wiring. We're better for it. You're not broken. We are all called to walk in our gifting. And as we've been talking about with our sermon series, The Broken Family, we've been talking about how spiritual families are meant to operate. How are we called as people to operate together? And we've spent time, if you've been with us the last handful of months, going through this, that spiritual families are called to that idea of spiritual protection, active listening and responding, predictable patterns, kingdom purpose. Are you catching what's happening here? That spiritual families who are operating in health have a place for everyone to walk in their giftings. The teacher who's thinking about that protection, the prophet who's thinking about listening and responding, the shepherd who cares about the predictable patterns. And I know I don't have 2 up there. That's because we're not done with our sermon series, but the evangelist and the thinking prophet have a place up there too. But here we all are, learning to operate in health, learning to invest in one another, learning that this is not just about certain individuals or what I want in family and community, but learning about what he wants in family and community, and learning to see the beautiful things that other people bring to the table. This is incredibly essential for the health and forward movement of the church. This is why in Acts chapter 2 we read that the church exploded, because people started operating in their gifting, because there was enough space for all of the gifts to be seen, and because they were following one Lord, one faith, one God and Father. And so as we see this play out in our context, there are some things we need to think about. How does this matter for us in our 21st century space? Well, one of the things for us to realize is if you take those numbers that I just said, 73% of people are a shepherd or a teacher within their intelligence, within their wiring, within their gifting. 27% are evangelist, prophetic, apostolic. And I want to stop for just a second, because I want us to know, again, our identity is secure as sons and daughters of the King. I also want to bring before us that our specific and unique calling and intelligence doesn't mean that that's the only one I ever have to do and I don't have an excuse to operate in any of the rest of them. That's just not the case. For me, my shepherding is my lowest. I'm not wired that way. It's hard for me. I need people in my life who are wired that way, who can help me, but it doesn't give me an excuse to not tap into it. It just means that it's a process that I have to submit to the Lord's work in my life. It means that the prophetic comes easier, that strategic thinking comes easier. But we phase in and out. Okay, so if this is the case, if 73% of people are wired as teacher-shepherd, what does that mean when we think about this idea? That actually your apostles and your prophets within their intelligence are very pioneering. They're constantly thinking about the future. They want to break new ground. They want to move the kingdom forward. They want to start new ministries. They want to start new businesses. It is not a mistake that an apostle, my husband, and a thinking prophet, me, wanted to plant a church. It's in our wiring that we want to see the kingdom go forward. We want to move. Shepherds, teachers are our developers. They're our settlers. They're the ones who come alongside people and invest long-term in the care and the development of others. They want to settle. They want to listen. They want to get their hands dirty in life with people. And then you have your evangelist who bridges the gap, who stands in the middle, who can be forward-thinking, but who also understands how important it is to make sure that everyone has a voice at the table. And there they stand in the middle, pulled between the two. Can you see, one, how unique all of these are, but two, where the problems could come in? How the problems, if we don't understand all of these giftings, if we can only see ours and don't even really understand ours, the problem with this is that gap in the middle can get wider. Where the apostles and the prophets are like, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. We've got stuff to do. And the people in the back are saying, why are we hurrying? And the people who are settling are saying, you need to slow down because this person is worth investing in. And people over here are saying, but let's go, let's go, let's go. And all of a sudden there can be this gap that emerges. We need both. And it's not that the apostles and the prophets are unwilling to settle, and it's not that the teachers and the shepherds are unwilling to move forward. It's just the way we're wired, and so we have to be intentional about it. We have to be intentional to see where other people are coming from and to see where there can be gaps and to see that, yes, we are called to do the long haul with people, and yes, we are called to move forward. And the answer is yes, we need both, but we need to do it in a way that is God-honoring. We need to do it in a way that is healthy. We need to make sure that we're not just in predictable patterns because we're afraid of change, and we're not just moving forward because we're afraid of sitting still. That all of it is centered on Him and on seeing the giftings and the beauty in one another. Isn't that interesting? And I have one more thought I want to throw out for you, and then I'll bring this to a close. We'll spend some time processing. If you're still not sure where you land and where your intelligence is, I want to throw out one more thing that might help you. And that's this: volume speaking intensity levels. Now, this is not the case for everyone, but generally, those who have that shepherding intelligence will often be the quietest in a room. They will be standing back, they will be watching, they will be looking. What do people need? What do they see? Shepherds who don't understand how beautiful their gift is will often feel like their voice isn't worth being heard. And so there's no point in really bringing anything up. But we need that voice. So they're often the quietest. And then your prophet's doing the same thing. They're standing back and watching, but they're doing it for different reasons. They're standing back and watching, asking, Lord, what are you doing? What am I sensing? What am I seeing? What's happening in this space? And they'll often be quiet as well until the Lord tells them to speak. And then your teachers are kind of the middle of the road. They can get up, they can talk, or they can hang back and listen. They will ask lots of questions. They're not afraid to speak up if they think that something is going to get in the way of truth and walking that out. And then you have your evangelists who they walk into a room, and most often we know it. We know it, we love it. And then you have the apostles who come storming into a room, and we absolutely know it, and everyone down the street knows it too. Because there's an intensity to the way they speak, a passion to the way they speak that's so beautiful. Now, again, this is not the case for everyone, but generally, this is how it lands, which is why we are called, as God's people, to create space for those who may not otherwise speak, for those who may just stand back. We get to encourage what God is drawing out in folks. We get to listen. We get to cultivate a culture of curiosity about what God is doing in people and learn to ask questions. And so there's this sense that when all of us are operating as we are wired, the kingdom moves forward in healthy, God-honoring ways. And one of the things you'll see up there is that if you add up those numbers, on the right side of that triangle, you will see 77.5% of folks, their intelligence lies right on this, well, I guess if I'm looking at it, the right side of that triangle. 77.5% of folks, which is awesome. Okay, let's be honest. Apostles, I'm gonna talk to prophets and apostles for just a moment. Let's be honest. If there were 77% of folks had apostolic giftings, we would all be pretty tired because everyone would be going their own way. It's okay that God has given percentages the way he has. He's done it uniquely with purpose. But we can also see up there, if we're not careful, the church can operate only on that right side of the triangle. That what we do day in and day out, our ministries, our midweek programs, our Sunday mornings, could live right there because that's the way most of us are wired. And we can forget that God actually has a missional purpose, a kingdom purpose for all of us, that God actually has a message of hope that is socially diverse and for all people, that God is actually drawing us back into hearing his voice, that we need to create space for all of these. That's why our spiritual families are centered on trying to create space for all of this. It's harder because most of us are used to midweek things looking a certain way. Bible studies, prayer groups. This is a little bit outside the box. To create groups of people who are committed to walking together, who will create space at the table for everyone to operate in their gifting and challenging us all to grow. It's pretty exciting. And as I look at Scripture, I see that when folks do this, the gospel goes forward in ways that we could have never asked or imagined. And so our spiritual families are spending time developing, creating avenues for these. And I want to let you know, too, that if the spiritual families that we currently have don't fit with kind of where your heart and vision is or what God's doing in your life, or maybe just practically the day and time, we have more that are going to be starting in the next couple months, more things that are going to happen different days. We want to be able to invite everyone to be able to walk this out. But it doesn't just end with spiritual families. We get to walk in our calling on the soccer field, in our homes, at work, here in this context. I think about the worship team. I watched them this morning, and I think about the people whose intelligence I know so far in this journey, and it's all different up here. Folks who have different wiring and giftings, and we need them. We need different folks with different wirings, serving our kids, greeting folks at the door. There's a space here for all of us to fit, to be brought up to maturity so that God gets the glory and God alone. There's only one person who did all of these, and that was Jesus. And he's invited us into the greatest adventure we will ever know. The church is not meant to be passive. Church is a family, a body of believers who are walking in kingdom authority, who have their eyes open to what God is doing, who are listening and wanted to be invited into the adventure. That's worth fighting for. It's worth developing. It's worth the messy, awkward, not quite getting it right, but we're going to keep trying mentality. Because I want God to get the glory. I don't want it to be about being the coolest looking church or the person who has it all together. The heart is maturity and growth so that we can face whatever this life is throwing our way. So with that, we're going to go. We've got about 13 minutes left. But the heart is that we're meant to create space for stability, substance, security, social diversity, and significance. So we have about 13 minutes left, and I want to bring us back. We're actually going to end with some worship time today, some worship space time. We typically do this in the middle of the service, but we're going to end this way because we want to give you an opportunity to process. What's God saying? What's he capturing your attention on? What is he drawing out in you? What is he awakening in you? What is he reminding you of? And so we're going to take about 10 minutes, and we're going to be quiet up here, and we're going to turn on some music. And we're going to invite you to come back to this passage, to sit in this passage, read it again, ask the Lord, invite him in. If you're a person who processes well by writing or drawing, there's a table back there that has sketch pads and journals. Feel free to go back there and to just sit for a little bit, writing, thinking, processing. Over at this table, as I already mentioned, are some color sheets. If you're someone who processes well by being able to talk to someone else, grab someone else, go over and just grab a color sheet. And while you're coloring, just talk to one another. What's God saying? What's he drawing out in you? Parents, it might be an opportunity for you to go back there with your kids. What's God saying? And that could be a space where if you're a verbal processor, you have the opportunity to do that. But we're just going to sit for a few minutes. We're going to hear him. The last thing I'll say, and then I'll be quiet, is in the seats around you are some baskets that have the Bibles in them, but they also have some blank sheets of paper. And if they've all been used, there's more back there. But I'm just curious, what's God doing in our midst? What's he doing with this group of people? So at any point throughout the 10 minutes, if you think you know your intelligence, the way God has wired you, I would just love if you would just grab a little slip of paper and write what it is. So shepherd. And you can just stick it in. There's a basket by the giving box back there. And if you're willing, you can also put your name, but you don't have to. I'm just curious the makeup of this church body. What's God doing? What's he drawing out? And so if you'd be willing to do that, you don't have to, but we're going to invite you to do that as well as we take the next probably 8 or 9 minutes to just process and hear what he's saying. Sound good? Okay, let's do it.